Today we're going to be talking about ecosystem formation. And the main thing we'll be talking about is ecological succession. Succession means to come one after another. So ecosystems don't just appear, they occur over a very long period of time. So an ecosystem will continue to change until a stable system is formed. So think about a forest. A forest doesn't just start out as all of these huge trees. It needs to start from something small. And changes happen over time, and eventually you get this hardwood wood forest. So, when we talk about ecological succession, the replacement of a community by another until a stable climax community is reached. So, what that just means is you're going to change how your community looks over time. So maybe you start out with a small little patch of grass and then suddenly you can grow a flower and then it changes again and now you can grow a shrub and then a small tree and then a large tree. So over time, you're changing your community until you reach a stable climax community. So a climax community is basically when the community or the ecosystem is stable so it does not have to change anymore. Succession always begins with a pioneer organism. So, a pioneer organism is going to be the first organism or living thing that moves into an area. So, pioneer organisms, they're like the first discoverers. Think of a pioneer. When you think of a pioneer, there's someone who arrives first to settle the land. Same thing with a pioneer organism. So, pioneer organisms are usually things like lichens or moss. These things are like green leaf-like looking organisms that can live on bare rock. So they usually appear first in an ecosystem. So we always start with a pioneer organism who discovers the area, and you end with a climax community, which is that stable community. So pioneer organisms, they're the first to inhabit an area, and the climax community is a stable ecological community where little change occurs. So an example of a climax community would be a hardwood forest. So there's oak hickory and hemlock beech maple. They represent climax communities in New York State. So there's two ways to reach that climax community. The first one is called primary succession. So this is showing you primary succession. Primary succession occurs when there is nothing to start with. There was no community to begin with. It's usually just bare rock. So picture just a rocky area. What happens is this bare rock gets colonized by a pioneer species. So think of moss or lichens. These moss or lichens can live on bare rock. Now, what these pioneer species do is they begin to break up that rock. Basically, their roots are going to break through the rock and create topsoil. Now, once we have soil, we can start to grow grasses, and these grasses are going to kick out the pioneer species and take over. So now you start to grow these low grasses and flowers. As you grow this, you get more nutrients into the soil. As the nutrients increase, now you can start to grow shrubs, which are basically bushes or shorter plants. As time goes on and you still have more and more nutrients, and now you even have more depth in the soil because over time, more of this rock will break down and more of this soil will build up with nutrients in it, you can now grow trees to create your climax community. So your climax community in this case is a hardwood forest. And this once again is primary succession. The other type of succession is called secondary succession. So secondary succession happens when you already had a climax community, but something tragic happens, a natural disaster. So I've already got my beautiful forest with my big trees all set up, but then a disturbance happens. So let's say there's a forest fire, or maybe deforestation. The humans came and chopped all of the trees down. Excuse me. Something happened that destroyed your climax community. But after that destruction, you still have that layer of soil from before, from all the way back here. So since you have that soil, you can begin to grow fast-growing plants. And then once again, you can grow that climax community. So that's why after a forest fire, those forests are able to grow back. Secondary succession happens much faster than primary succession because they don't have to break through rock. They already have the soil in place. So primary succession is a very slow process, while secondary succession takes a while, but definitely not as long as primary succession. And here's a video just to summarize what I went over.
Mature forests contain a variety of plants. Prehistoric pines, old oaks, and historical hickories dominate the area. Sometimes, entire forests can be wiped out by natural disturbances like fire. The day after a fire, the forest would look abandoned. However, over time, the forest would grow back. First, low-growing grasses would sprout, then bushes, followed by small trees. The predictable changes that occur in a community is called succession. There are two kinds of succession. Primary succession is the change that occurs in an area where no soil existed. Ice melting to expose bare rock would go through primary succession. Over time, pioneer species will populate the area. Organisms like mosses and lichens break up the rock and help create soil. Next, seed dispersal would bring seeds to the new soil, and small plants would start to grow. Over time, the once bare rock will become a mature adult forest. Secondary succession occurs when a developed ecosystem gets disturbed by natural disasters. Fires and tornadoes can wipe out fully developed pieces of land. Human activities like farming and logging can also change landscapes. First, low-growing plants will populate the area. Then, trees will appear and develop. Secondary succession creates a mature forest faster than primary succession because soil was already present in the area. Primary succession is growth for the first time. Secondary succession occurs where soil had already existed. Both types of succession are a series of predictable changes in the development of an ecosystem. Succession.
And that's it for today's notes. Please make sure you reach out or comment with any questions.